Friends, today we're looking at 13 of the tallest structures inside of the Disneyland Resort. Brickey here, let's go. Disneyland Sleeping Beauty Castle may be the smallest of all the castles, but it's by far the biggest one in my heart. Coming in at number 13 on our list, Sleeping Beauty Castle stands at 77 feet tall. And although that may not sound super tall, it does provide a super important function at Disneyland, acting as not only the central icon of the park, but a division line between two important lands that have two very specific meanings, and that it creates a wall keeping Fantasyland away from Main Street USA, taking reality and removing it from the fantasy. A common myth is that Sleeping Beauty Castle is dead center of the park. That's not true, but it is the dead center of the heart of the park as the north icon on the hub, guiding people into the Disneyland adventure where they make their decision on which land they want to go to start their day. And I really believe what it lacks in height, it does make up in character. And this is Walt's castle. It's the only one he ever got to see, and it will forever be, I think, one of the most valuable buildings that the Disney parks will ever own. Number 12 on our list, Splash Mountain, RIP, soon to be Tiana's Bayou Adventure at 87 feet. This is put here not only to give us an amazing ride, but to also block out the views of the Disneyland Hotel as well as downtown Disney. But did you know that this building is way taller than 87 feet? I'll explain that Tony Baxter design fun fact next when we go over to our next one on the charts. It's Big Thunder Mountain. Number 11 on our list, Big Thunder Mountain coming in at 104 feet. Does it feel so much taller than that? Yeah. One of my favorite things about Big Thunder Mountain is how it is recessed down into the ground, how it has its own berm. You see this with both Big Thunder Mountain and previous on our list, Splash Mountain. This was done so that neither one of these mountains would be taller than Matterhorn or Sleeping Beauty Castle. Therefore, I feel there is a strong chance that both of these would probably be much taller if they just sat on a ground surface level. But Disney, being smart, knew that to put each of these further down into the soil would not only create proper sight lines, but keep people away from the base of the mountain, therefore making it look much taller, because our eyes are trained that when we see a human, we think that it's about 5 feet or so. If you saw people standing in front of the mountain, it would instantly make it smaller. The fact that we never see the line makes Big Thunder Mountain seem quite big. If you think about the true intention of Grizzly Peak, it's actually a wall or a fence put down the spine of DCA to separate the storytelling from the east and the western side. It's pretty brilliant when you think about it. Number 10 on our list and our first DCA entry, Grizzly Peak, coming in at 110 feet. If you want to keep the pier as a big surprise, if you want Pacific Wharf to be something that folks discover, and eventually, if you want them to come around, turn, and see the beauty of Radiator Springs, having a giant wall down the spine of your park keeps 50% of the park out of the guest view until they go around the curve and they discover it. This sight line has an amazing intention. I cannot believe how many people I have heard say, "What is that, a wolf?" No, it's a bear, symbolizing California. What was thought to be the icon of DCA never really stick with guests, as for whatever reason, this just didn't hold on to people the same way that the Fun Wheel did later on in our list today. And this wall concept works, how DCA uses Grizzly Peak as a partition to create all the quiet vibes on this side of the park versus just the total chaos machine directly on the other side of this berm down the spine of DCA. Going to show how Imagineers are fully aware of how they can mold the land all around the park to create two very uniquely experiences for the guests in the same small footprint of land. I love this. Coming in at 118 feet, number 9, somewhere behind this pile of junk, Space Mountain. Which Space Mountain I kind of have a bone to pick with, both here at Disneyland and out in the Magic Kingdom, because it always sits behind Main Street USA here in the States, and it kind of towers over the thematic story of Main Street USA. I definitely wish there was a way that the Space Mountains weren't so visible for both main streets on the west and the east coast, But as I say that, I realize you can barely even see it because of Sorrowland junk in the way. But I have to admit, I very much appreciated Space Mountain during the pandemic, because when I would do my weekly drive by the park while it was closed for 440 days, it was one of the few icons that I could see from outside of the park. And I just remember parking my car in Harbor and just being thankful that I got to see a little bit of Disneyland. The Incredicoaster comes in at number 8 at 120 feet tall. By creating an elongated roller coaster on the backside of the pier, essentially Disneyland was able to make a fence, keeping the outside world away from the storytelling world of Disney. It's actually very creative placement when you think about the relationship between the Incredicoaster and then Catella. Creating a big fence along the backside of the park keeps the two worlds separated, but also makes good use of a narrow amount of space. Whereas in the middle of the Incredicoaster, it tapers down incredibly tight, and then at the ends, it has its turnarounds, with the largest turnaround being over on the southwest corner to block out hotels in that direction. 120 feet of height put to a very good use, and coming on later on in our countdown, we'll talk about Mickey's Fun Wheel and how the two work together to create even more Disney magic with those perfect sightlines. Coming in at number 7 on our list at 125 feet is the top of the Cadillac Range. Who thought that this was 5 feet taller than the Incredicoaster? Not me. One of the tricks of the Cadillac Range that's amazing, if you notice, the rocks that are closest to you are painted darker and more intense. But the Cadillac Range is specifically painted much, much lighter, therefore making your eyes believe that it's much further off in the distance than what it actually is. And it's there to keep the Anaheim Convention Center out of our view. Because literally right on the other side of the Cadillac Range are real Cadillacs going up and down Catella Avenue. So it's pretty amazing what rock sculptures the size of a 10-story building can do to keep your fans inside of the Radiator Race. Topping off at 135 feet, number 6 on our list, the spires of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, which these spires are such great Disneyland problem solving. It shows Disney using height as a perfect tool in keeping people inside of the magic and making the outside world disappear. By creating very tall sight lines but a very narrow passageway for guests, you are pushed up against these very tall spires, therefore blocking out Pixar pals and Mickey and friends on the other side of these spires. Just as we saw over at Grizzly Peak, imagine the spires as a giant fence that keeps us inside of the story while keeping folks on the other side of the fence away from seeing the magic. And off in the distance, number 5, the Disneyland Hotel. That's right, number 5 on our list, the 140-foot tall, 12-story Disneyland Hotel. Ain't she a beaut? If you're curious how tall a story is, a story in a commercial building is typically 12 feet. But keep in mind, first, second, third levels, if there's a convention center or a grand entryway, those can sometimes knock that measurement off. But a rule of thumb on a commercial building, about 12 feet per story. But how many stories is a Disney building? How big is your heart? The Disneyland Hotel, I think, adds in that mid-century feeling, the optimism that Disneyland was all birthed around. Walt Disney had a home out in Palm Springs. He had a big heart when he thought about the future and what could happen. Loved the World's Fair concept. Epcot was supposed to be a city of the future. And I think that the Disneyland Hotel here in California embraces that part of the Disney ethos. Coming in at 147 feet, it's the Matterhorn, which once was the tallest thing in Disneyland, but that's no longer the case, as progress has bumped it down to number 4 on our list. The magic of the Matterhorn is Disney problem solving at its finest. Walt didn't want attractions junking up his park. He didn't want it to just look like a regular theme park. So the advent of hiding the ride inside of a mountain started here at Disneyland. And just think about how different the landscape of Disneyland has forever been because of having a mountain next to the castle, not a roller coaster. It changes the entire story, it changes the sightlines, and it actually changed the entire trajectory of the company, where we would see Disney use the mountain concept over and over again, not only here at home in Disneyland, but around the world and at Walt Disney World, home to the biggest Disney attraction, Expedition Everest. No thank you. You know, today I've taken you to the great heights of Disneyland, but the lowest of the low is watching this video and not subscribing. Thank you so much for joining Hey Brickey today and going on these adventures with me. Now, let's go back to some of those great heights that we've all agreed not to get low. Coming in at number 3 on our list at 150 feet is Forever to Me, the Mickey Fun Wheel. This attraction's height serves a major purpose to create a backdrop for the old Paradise Pier Lagoon. It's worthy of mentioning that when the Fun Wheel and the roller coaster showed up, World of Color was not a real thing. However, Walt Disney Imagineering was able to creatively think of a way to create both the Fun Wheel and the roller coaster as a visual backdrop for a nighttime show. As World of Color has been updated over the years, the backdrop has had lights, lasers, and even a projection screen added to it. But I love how we see the Fun Wheel as well as the Incredicoaster work together to create a visual backdrop, keeping you submerged inside of the Pixar Pier area, where if these two structures weren't here, now you'd be able to see lots of hotels that have been creeping their way into the Disneyland sightline. And number 2 on our list, this one shocked me, the Pixar Place Hotel, coming in at 180 feet. 15 stories overlooking Disney's California Adventure. I am still trying to get used to the black and white aesthetic. It doesn't blend in as well as the previous version did with the Pixar Pier, which just took on the idea that there was a beachfront and that we were exploring a California, ocean adjacent theme park. I'm still getting used to it, but I'm not going to say that it looks like a children's hospital like some people do. But I do have to admit that it shocked me that this was the second largest building on property. I did not have this on my bingo card. And I think largely that's just because the aesthetic of this hotel has been kind of forgettable. It's not part of the Disneyland Resort that makes people excited. But Disney has been putting a tremendous effort into it, trying to add in some of that Disney personality, and so far so good. More to come, I believe. I do just wish though that there was something on the top of this building that felt iconic, something that made it uniquely Disney. I know they've installed the Pixar Luxo lamp on the side of the building. It's hard to see because it's under construction right now, but I just feel like there's something quite missing from this building to give it that personality. And I hope future icons to come embrace that Disney storytelling and are like beacons of magic, guiding us into the park, telling us that adventure is out there. And number 1 on our list at 187 feet, Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout. The old Hollywood Tower of Terror is so tall that it actually acts as a wayfinding device, giving guests outside of the park walking up harbor an indication of just how far away the Disneyland Resort is. But guests inside of the park gives them a visual identity where that furthest corner is, and now where they can find all of their Avengers adventures. Ultimately, I think this version of the ride is better, but I'm not gonna lie, I love the aesthetic of the old Hollywood style hotel that used to reside here. I just loved how it matched with Carthay Circle so beautifully. And now it kind of looks like a giant oil refinery in the sky. And I live in Long Beach, so I don't need to see another one of those. In typical Disneyland storytelling, I do love though that the fake hotel tower is taller than the 2 real hotel towers on property. Today we discovered 13 of the tallest icons all around the Disneyland Resort. But if you'd like to see the 13 oldest things inside of Disneyland, make sure you watch this video right here. Thank you so much for showing up. And I'm 5'11" if you need a scale of reference for how tall these things really were.